The Vorkosh descended through the planet's atmosphere in a silent glide, its sleek hull glinting against the dim light of a dying sun. Inside, Commander Xytel stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. The bridge pulsed with the hum of sensor feeds and tactical readouts. On the primary display, the barren colony world stretched out beneath them. Scorched earth, skeletal buildings, a monument to human failure. "Pathetic," murmured one of the junior officers. Xytel did not correct him. The humans had fought savagely in the war, but their final defeat had been absolute. This world, Vecnal 3, was one of many stripped from them. Now, it was a training ground for the YY Carry elite, a place where young warriors honed their instincts against the galaxy's former apex predators. "Launch the hunting squads," Xytel ordered. In the deployment bay, 6 strike teams suited up, their reflective armor absorbing the dim light. Razor-thin helmets sealed into place, enhancing their vision spectrum, infrared, motion tracking, neural activity scans. Their weapons were precise, elegant, superior. This was not war. It was a hunt. With a synchronized step, the squads dispersed from the ship's ventral bay, moving like phantoms over the ruined landscape. Dust curled around their boots as they spread into a search pattern, sweeping their scanners in slow, methodical arcs. Primary structures cleared, a lieutenant reported. No biological readings beyond microbial decay. No residual power signatures. The humans here died a long time ago. Xytel listened, unimpressed. The last recorded human activity on this world was over 2 years prior. Scattered survivors, all exterminated in a final purge. But prey had a way of lingering. His personal squad advanced toward the city center, moving through the husk of what had once been a human settlement. The structures stood like broken teeth, gutted by time and war. Inside, rusted remnants of human life sat frozen. Overturned chairs, shattered screens, personal belongings reduced to artifacts. The wind moaned through the ruins, carrying the ghosts of a lost species. Then, a new sound, a dull clunk. The lead warrior froze. Heads turned. Weapons lifted. The squad's targeting system scanned for movement, but nothing registered. Xytel activated his own visor overlay, filtering through the sensor feeds. Something had shifted. The dust near an old transit hub swirled unnaturally, as if displaced by an invisible force. A trap? Unlikely. The YY Carry knew human warfare. Desperate, aggressive, reliant on emotion over strategy. This was something else. A warrior moved forward, weapon raised, approaching the disturbed ground. A single step, another, a snap, metal under tension releasing, followed by a sharp mechanical whine. From the rooftops, a severed YY Carry head dropped onto the cracked pavement below. For a moment, silence. Then chaos. Weapons spun upward. Sensors flooded with interference. The severed head lay still, its expression frozen in a rictus of pain. But it was fresh. The blood hadn't even dried. "Who was that?" snapped the lieutenant. "We have no missing personnel." "That's not one of ours," Xytel said coldly. The implications hit all at once. This was not a dead world. Someone had been here. Recently. A static-laced signal crackled through their comms, hijacking their secure channel. A voice followed, calm, unhurried, human. "You're late." The feed cut. A heartbeat of hesitation ran through the squad, imperceptible but present. Xytel felt it, that creeping sliver of unease, the first sign of something no warrior dared admit doubt. "Switch to full combat alert," he ordered. "Widen formation. I want every structure mapped now." His warriors obeyed, but there was an unspoken shift in their movements. The hunt had become something else. As they advanced, the city around them felt different. The wind no longer howled sound dampeners? No, something else. The buildings watched. The empty streets listened. Every shadow was a question with no answer. A warrior near the rear of the formation exhaled sharply. This doesn't feel right. A moment later he was gone. Not a scream, not a struggle, just gone. The YY carry turned, weapons sweeping the empty space where he had stood. His locator beacons still blinked on their HUDs, active, unbroken. But he was no longer there. A nervous breath. Cloaking fields. No, XYTEL said. His own breath was steady, controlled. Something else. They moved faster. Less precise now, more reactive. That unspoken word loomed over them. A specter in the mist. Fear. Ahead, the lieutenant raised a fist. Commander, you'll want to see this. XYTEL approached. The squad stood at the mouth of an open chamber, a massive industrial space carved into the city's underground transit system. Inside, the walls were lined with bodies. Not human. YY carry. Suspended by crude rope, stripped of armor, their flesh bore marks. Cut, tested, examined. Some were headless. Others had been arranged. Their limbs splayed in a grotesque imitation of YY carry battle formations. A mockery. A lesson. A statement. Who did this? The lieutenant whispered. Another voice answered. You already know. They spun, weapons raised. A human stood at the entrance of the chamber. No armor. No weapon visible. Just a single man, his clothing worn, his posture relaxed. The YY carry targeting reticles locked on. But something was wrong. No biometric reading. No heat signature. How? The lieutenant breathed. The human smiled. I've been watching you. Every YY carry warrior in the chamber tensed. The tension was a physical thing now, thick in the air, pressing against their every movement. The human did not move, did not blink. The lieutenant took a cautious step forward, rifle raised. You are outnumbered. Identify yourself. The human's head tilted slightly, amused. Outnumbered. His voice was a whisper, yet it carried through the chamber like a gunshot. Then, XYTEL saw it. Movement. Not from the human. From above. From the shadows. From the walls. The first squad had landed alone. They were no longer alone. Figures emerged, blending from the ruins like ghosts stepping out of a forgotten war. Not one. Not two. Dozens. Each one human. Each one armed. The hunter's realization was slow, sickening, undeniable. The YY carry had not found survivors. The survivors had been waiting. A flicker of motion. The original human finally moved, a single step forward. Run. Then the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the chamber. The moment the lights cut, the squad activated their visor overlays, shifting to infrared. The human was gone. XYTEL's command instincts overrode his rising unease. Regroup. Defensive formation. His warriors moved in unison, forming a tight semicircle, weapons scanning every possible angle. The air felt thick, oppressive. Their infrared scopes flickered, static crackling at the edges of their displays. Environmental interference? No, deliberate sabotage. The lieutenant's voice held a controlled edge. They're using dampeners, masking their biosignatures. Another warrior snarled, switching his optics to motion tracking. Then we track movement. A blur. A shadow broke from the ceiling, impossibly fast. A choked cry, a brief struggle, then silence. The warrior was gone. The formation tightened. Every YY carry rifle swept in controlled arcs, seeking a target, finding nothing but empty space. XYTEL's mind raced. Humans were aggressive, impulsive. Their tactics relied on overwhelming force, not precision strikes. This wasn't war. This was a systematic dissection. The static in his comms cleared. A voice, calm and deliberate, filled his helmet. The same human from before. Tell me something, Commander. What do you hunt when the prey stops running? XYTEL's grip on his rifle tightened. The amusement in the human's tone burned hotter than any insult. He had never spoken to Prey before. Prey begged. Prey screamed. Prey did not taunt. He gestured sharply to his second-in-command. Seal exits. No one leaves. We burn them out. The order had barely left his mouth before the world shifted again. A deafening explosion from above. The ceiling buckled. Dust and debris rained down, obscuring vision. HFY stumbled back, stabilizing himself as his warriors adjusted. The upper levels collapsed inward, severing their escape route. That's cute, the human's voice returned. You still think you're in control. Another YY carry vanished. This time, HFY caught a glimpse. Hands flashing out from the dark, dragging the warrior upward. No wasted motion. No sound. Something was very, very wrong. Shift tactics, HFY barked. Pair off. Back to back. No more gaps. His warriors obeyed, but he saw the change in their stances. The rigid confidence was fracturing. Predators did not do well with fear. His visor feed flickered. Then, something new appeared on the squad's shared display. A helmet cam feed. HFY recognized the identifier. One of the missing warriors. The feed played, disorienting, jostled. The warrior's breathing was ragged, fast. He had been taken alive. The image shifted, settling on a view of something out of frame. A human standing over him. No weapons drawn. No armor. Just watching. Look at them, the human murmured. His voice was clearer now, as if speaking directly into their comms. Arrogant. Confident. They think they own the hunt. Until the moment they don't. The warrior in the feed struggled. It didn't matter. The human leaned down, just enough for the YY carry to see his face. Expressionless. Unbothered. Then the feed cut. Silence filled the comms. Not static. Not jamming. Just the absence of sound, calculated and complete. HFY exhaled slowly. We are dealing with trained survivors. The lieutenant's tone was razor-sharp. Impossible. No human units were unaccounted for after the purge. Any who remained would have perished. Then explain this. A new marker appeared on their HUDs. Movement detected. A door at the far end of the chamber opened on its own. No wind. No impact. Just a mechanical click and then the slow, deliberate creak of hinges. It wasn't an escape route. It was an invitation. HFY debated. They had two options. Stay here and risk being picked off one by one or move forward into a trap they could at least control. Advance. Keep formation tight. They moved. Through the corridor, weapons raised, steps precise. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Artificial climate control? No, something else. Then they found it. A YY carry corpse, nailed to the wall by a repurposed human weapon. Its armor had been stripped away, its rifle discarded at its feet. But that wasn't what made them stop. The corpse had words carved into its chest. Human script. Run. The warrior nearest to HFY inhaled sharply. They're toying with us. HFY studied the message. No, not a taunt. A warning. His mind raced, drawing conclusions, reshaping the battlefield in his head. If these humans had been left behind, they hadn't merely survived. They had adapted. Then something whispered. Not through the comms. Not through the air. From behind them, a cold prickle ran down HFY's spine. He turned sharply. Nothing. Thermals. The squad switched instantly. The corridor lit up with movement. Too many. Dozens. They had never been alone. Gunfire erupted. YY carry weapons cut through the space, but the shadows moved too fast. HFY's enhanced vision caught glimpses. Human figures darting through the darkness, never fully in sight, never staying still long enough to be hit. The lieutenant cursed. They're using the terrain. Hurting us. Break formation. HFY countered. Unpredictable movement. Force them to react. His warriors scattered, but the humans had already anticipated it. The first YY carry to sprint forward was yanked sideways, disappearing into the void. Another warrior raised his rifle. A blade took his hand off at the wrist. Not a bullet. A blade. Primitive. Inefficient. Silent. XYTEL spun, trying to locate a single clear target. Then, an asterisk hand wrapped around his throat. Not tight. Not crushing. Just holding. A presence in the dark. A human's breath near his ear. "What do you do, Commander?" the voice whispered. "When you are no longer the strongest thing in the room." XYTEL twisted, driving his elbow back, but the pressure vanished. His own momentum sent him forward. The human was already gone. The lieutenant's panicked voice cut through the confusion. "Commander, we're compromised. We need immediate evac." XYTEL opened his comms. "Vorkosh, do you read?" Static. Then, "Sorry, Commander." The human's voice on their ship's channel. "They can't hear you anymore." XYTEL's pulse thundered in his ears. This had gone beyond a hunt, beyond an ambush. This was an execution. The realization came too late. A final burst of movement. The lights returned, and half his squad was missing. XYTEL stood motionless. The chamber, once filled with the disciplined presence of his warriors, now felt cavernous, empty. Only a handful remained. The rest gone. No bodies, no blood, no sound of struggle. Just absence, like they had never existed at all. The surviving YY carry adjusted their stances, shifting from battle-ready to something more primal. Their weapons remained raised, but their fingers tightened around grips in a way that betrayed their instincts. Survival, not dominance. The lieutenant's voice was barely controlled. "We are being eliminated." XYTEL said nothing. He already knew. Their helmets still displayed active life signs for the missing warriors. All of them. As if they were standing right there. The readings pulsed steadily, showing no change, no distress, no indication of what had happened. But the warriors were gone. The humans had found a way to lie to their technology. A pulse of static licked the edges of their comms. Then, like the flicker of an old transmission feed, a voice bled through. "Your species talks about honor, victory, superiority." A beat of silence. "Tell me, Commander, does any of that help you now?" XYTEL exhaled slowly. Fear was a toxin. Clouded the mind, slowed the blade, turned warriors into prey. He pushed it aside. "Identify yourself." A short chuckle. "You don't really want that answer." The lieutenant bared his teeth. "Face us. End this coward's game." Another chuckle, this time softer. "Coward's game? That's interesting. Because from where I'm standing, you're the ones afraid to move." The words settled like a weight. It was true. They had stopped advancing, stopped hunting. Without realizing it, they had fallen into a defensive posture, backs pressed together, weapons aimed at nothing. Asterisk. XYTEL made a choice. Keep moving. We reached the surface. There was no argument. The remaining squad moved swiftly through the corridors, scanning every shadow, tracking every flicker of movement. The architecture shifted as they climbed, human structures giving way to open ground, shattered roads, crumbling towers stretching toward a dead sky. The ruins would work in their favor. Open terrain meant clear sightlines. No more corners for the enemy to hide behind. They emerged into the wasteland, boots crunching against brittle stone. The Vorkosh loomed above, sleek and predatory, its landing lights cutting through the dust-choked air. One final sprint. Escape was within reach. The first shot came from above. A single bullet cut the silence, fired from somewhere unseen. It struck a warrior at the edge of the formation, piercing through his helmet in a clean, efficient kill. His body folded, hitting the ground with a dull, final thud. No muzzle flash, No sound beyond the impact. Perfect surgical shot. Sniper. Scatter. XYTEL barked. But another round followed before the order was fully spoken. Another warrior fell. The lieutenant dove behind a broken structure, eyes scanning the horizon. They're predicting our movements. Switch to irregular patterns. They zigzagged, broke formation, forced unpredictability into their movements. The shooting stopped. A calculation was being made. XYTEL's mind raced. The YY carry had spent decades perfecting their warfare, stripping out weakness, refining their superiority. And now they were fighting something more adaptable than themselves. Static flared again. You thought we were gone. You thought you broke us. A shadow moved across the high ruins, just for a moment. A human sniper. One. That was all it took to halt the best warriors of the YY carry. You never understood us. The lieutenant clenched his jaw. I'll end this. He made his move quick, precise, predictable. He broke cover and sprinted for an elevated position to locate the shooter. One step. Two. A snap. The ground beneath him gave way. Not an explosive asterisk, a trap. The stone collapsed inward, swallowing him into a pit lined with sharpened metal shards. XYTEL did not hear him land. Only silence. Then, from the darkness below, the faintest gurgle of breath struggling through shredded lungs. The remaining warriors froze. No one moved. And just like that, the voice returned. He's gone too. XYTEL forced himself to breathe evenly. You're trying to break us. No, Commander. The voice was calm, cold. I'm showing you what it feels like. A memory stirred. Burned cities. Dying human screams. YY carry warriors walking untouched through the wreckage of a broken species. The final extermination. The difference was humans had screamed. Humans had fought in desperation, in anger, in grief. These humans fought with patience. Another movement. Not from the ruins. From the ship. XYTEL's blood ran cold. The boarding ramp was open. His own ship. Compromised. The realization struck all at once. They had never planned to stop him from reaching it. They had let him. Go ahead, the voice said. Run. Board your ship. Take off. Get back to your fleet. A pause. A trap waiting to be stepped into. See how far you get. One of his remaining warriors turned, sprinting for the ramp. A desperate gamble. He made it to the base of the ship before the airlock sealed. A heartbeat later, a muffled explosion detonated from inside the vessel. Fire surged through the hull. A self-destruct sequence activated from within. The warrior didn't even have time to scream. The Vorkosh, a warship designed to dominate entire planetary systems, was gone. XYTEL felt something unfamiliar coil around his throat. Not just anger, not just fear, powerlessness. There was no more battle, no more war, no more escape. Now, Commander, the human whispered, what do you do? For the first time in his life, XYTEL had no answer. XYTEL stood amidst the ruins, the glow of the burning warship casting jagged shadows across the wreckage. The air was thick with the acrid scent of molten metal and scorched flesh, but none of it registered. His mind was consumed by a singular, terrifying realization. This was not an ambush. This was not a battle. This was extermination. And he was the prey. The last of his warriors, only 3 now, stood with their backs to him, scanning the darkness. They no longer moved with the precision of an elite hunting unit. Their posture was rigid, their fingers restless on their triggers. They had fought countless battles, conquered entire species, crushed entire planetary defenses without pause. But they had never known this. The sensation of being outmatched, of being studied, of having every tactic countered before it could even be executed. A voice cut through the comms again, but this time there was no amusement, no taunts. "You were right about one thing, Commander." A brief pause. "We were broken once." A flicker of movement. One of the warriors spun, fired a burst into the darkness. Nothing but silence followed. No return fire. No body hitting the ground. HFY exhaled slowly, measuring his words. "You're not human anymore." A beat of silence. Then the voice returned, lower, almost thoughtful. "No." HFY tightened his grip on his rifle. "You let us think we won. You let us believe you were extinct. You assumed we died out because we weren't responding the way you expected." A quiet chuckle devoid of humor. "But humans don't go extinct. We adapt." Another burst of movement, this time inside their ranks. One of his warriors gave a strangled cry as something pulled him backward, yanked him into the darkness. His weapon clattered against the stone. No struggle, no chance to fight back. HFY's pulse remained steady, but deep in his gut, he knew there was nothing he could do. The second warrior turned, eyes wide with something close to panic. "We can still call for extraction. The fleet." His voice cut off in a wet gurgle. HFY barely caught the moment. A blur, a flash of metal, a swift and brutal motion. The warrior's body twitched, then slumped. His throat had been severed with a blade. No energy weapon, no projectile fire. A blade, a close, personal, deliberate. The final soldier, the last aside from HFY himself, broke. He turned and ran, sprinting for open ground. He barely made it 5 steps before a thin, humming wire snapped tight across his path, catching his leg mid-stride. The force flipped him forward, and before he even hit the ground, something else moved. HFY saw the shadow shift. A human figure emerged from the dark, moving with practiced, effortless efficiency. In a single, fluid motion, the figure caught the falling warrior by the throat, spun him around, and drove a blade through the base of his skull. The HFY's body jerked, then stilled. The human held him there, just for a moment, watching. Then, with the same cold precision, they lowered the corpse to the ground, like it was nothing more than a discarded tool. HFY did not move. For the first time, he got a clear look at his enemy. The human was lean, not bulky like the ones his kind had fought before. Their armor was stripped down, custom-built, patched together from scavenged material. The plating was worn, darkened by soot and blood. But their eyes, those remained untouched by the years. Focused, controlled. This was not a soldier. This was something else. The human studied him, not with the burning rage of vengeance, not with the arrogance of a victorious predator, just curiosity. HFY met the gaze. "Why are you letting me live?" The human tilted their head slightly, considering the question. Then finally they spoke. "Because I want you to go back." HFY narrowed his eyes. "To my people?" The human stepped closer. "To your fleet, to your leaders. I want you to look them in the eye and tell them the truth." "And what truth is that?" A pause. Then, with quiet certainty, "You never won." The words settled over HFY like a final weight, pressing down on him, crushing the last remnants of his certainty. The HFY had always believed in absolute control. Conquest was inevitable. Survival was for the strong. They had never lost a war. But this wasn't a war. This was a lesson. And the humans had spent years, decades, perfecting their new purpose. HFY inhaled slowly, then gave the smallest nod. Not submission, not surrender, but understanding. The human took a step back, gesturing toward the open land behind them. Go! HFY did not hesitate. He turned, walking toward the distant horizon, his mind already calculating his next move. He would find a way back to his fleet. He would deliver the message, and he would make sure they listened. Because for the first time in his life, HFY understood what it meant to fear something. And he knew, without a doubt, this was only the beginning.